Headless POV, cutting through the bull with information that's sourced and verified. Top story: a war without a map. 5 months in, the war with Iran has everything except an objective. This week, it entered its most dangerous phase yet. 7 straight nights of U.S. airstrikes, bridges, ports, infrastructure around Bandar Abbas. Iran struck back at U.S. bases across the Gulf, killed at least 8 of America's Kurdish allies in Iraq, and sent a missile toward Doha that Qatar had to intercept. The Strait of Hormuz, a fifth of the world's oil in peacetime, is effectively shut. Traffic has collapsed from 15 ships a day to 8. Oil jumped 10% this week alone. And through all of it, one simple question has never been answered. What is the goal? Because the reasons keep changing. It started in February as a strike on Iran's nuclear program. Then it was about the supreme leader. Then a memorandum of understanding that was supposed to end it. Then the Strait. Now it's a naval blockade and a fight over who collects a toll on the world's oil. Even the outlets covering it have noticed. The stated reasons for this war, in NPR's words this week, have shifted over time. A war with a shifting story is a war without a plan. And a war without a plan was never voted on. Congress still has not authorized this. 5 months, thousands of strikes, an oil shock, and allies under fire, with no declaration and no debate on the record. Now widen the lens, because the war isn't the whole story. It's one symptom. The same week the bombs kept falling, the Secretary of State stood up and vowed to dismantle the International Criminal Court, the world's only permanent court for genocide and war crimes, brick by brick if necessary. The plan? Sanction its officials, ban their travel, and pressure allies to abandon it. The trigger was the court's war crimes warrants against Israel's leadership. The message to the world: the law does not apply to us or our friends. And to the allies themselves, the tone is the same. Tariffs and trade threats aimed at Canada, at Mexico, at the European Union. Public insults for the leaders of friendly democracies. A campaign to pull nations out of an international court. Here's the thread. This was once the party of peace through strength and American moral leadership. What's on display this week is force without objectives and law without courts. Strength with no peace. Leadership with no allies. That's not statesmanship. It's a wrecking ball with the American flag painted on it. Pattern recognized. You should know better. 3 headlines, 3 news organizations. 1 standard, they all failed. 1. The New York Times. For years, the press dissected the last president's every stumble, every pause, every question about his age and acuity. This week, the Times' own Maggie Haberman admitted on camera that when it comes to the current president's health, the paper hasn't done the same. His health, she said, is like a black box, and she called the reporting on it an area of failure for us. He has made repeated, unexplained visits to Walter Reed, with less and less information released each time. The Times knows the standard. Its own star reporter says they haven't met it. 2. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Last month, the Journal-Constitution published a serious investigation, a pattern of sexual and domestic abuse, it alleged, covered up inside the University of Georgia football program. Grave charges. Then, the university demanded a retraction. The paper reviewed its own work, walked back substantial parts of the story, and fired the reporter who wrote it. When the allegation is that severe, you do not run it until it is armored in proof. They ran it. It wasn't. 3. Voice of America. Voice of America is funded by American taxpayers and bound by law to one mission: accurate, independent journalism protected by a firewall from government control. This week, its own former correspondents went public to say that firewall has been shattered. With most of its newsroom sidelined, what remains, they say, now echoes administration talking points on the Iran war. that oil prices are down, that the Strait is open, while suppressing the civilian death toll from American airstrikes. In the words of a former bureau chief, the people giving the orders are breaking the law. A public broadcaster built to pierce propaganda is now, its own journalists warn, producing it. You've got the facts. Now it's your call. Subscribe today. See you next week.